Welcome to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. Today I have the amazing Anna Hull. Anna is an astrologer. She's based in Brooklyn. She's also a yoga teacher and a cosmic alignment coach, which is exactly what I think we all need. Anna combines her passions of astrology and yoga and meditation to provide practical ways for us to embody the cosmos. And her love for the moon has inspired her to focus on the nuances of lunar phases, which we're going to be talking about today. Through this process of doing this, she helps her clients find sustainable growth and productivity in their personal and professional lives. They're really tapping into a more connected cosmic rhythm. So we'll talk more at the end about how you can work with her, but she's currently offering private astrology readings, of which I have had one and highly recommend. She's doing lunar workshops and virtual yoga classes and a lot more. So Anna, welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you so much for having me.
It's really exciting to have you here. You're such an expert, and I love the way that you can take these sort of um, big picture ideas and sort of like there's so much information, but really drill it down into a way that the average person like me or the listeners can really understand about astrology and the moon. So how did you get that good at it?
I'm just so curious, Jill. I think my curiosity is one of my superpowers. And sometimes it gets me into a little bit of a rabbit hole on things. But I started studying astrology like informally when I was in college. I was just really obsessed with it. I'm a Leo, and everything I read, I was like, yes, Leo. And I just remember like drawing birth charts for my friends in our dorm rooms when I should definitely have been studying. And it was just like kind of I hodgepodged ideas together that I was learning, but I then kind of really formally started studying astrology and kind of working under teachers. And I was always really interested in like the archetypes and like what these different energies meant and how everyone could have such a different unique chart was like so fascinating to me. And then when I started reading charts for clients and for friends and family, I started to see how the information was really clicking with people, and it gave people an opportunity to meet themselves and learn more about themselves from a bit more of a detached perspective. And it helps them categorize different areas of their life or different parts of themselves in a really in a way that helps them like kind of get distance from things and get perspective on different things. And then from there, I just was hooked and just couldn't stop.
I love that, getting the perspective and having that sort of distance, because you're right, we can get so into it and sort of
Hmm.
identify so strongly,
Yeah.
especially somebody like me who doesn't know much about astrology, like with our sun sign, but there's
Yeah.
so much else to know.
Yeah.
Um, I especially love the offering that you have that's the season of life
Hmm.
reading, which I mean, I'm going to ask you to sort of take us through what that entails, but for me, it was really cool because always wanted to have a reading, but I didn't know what to ask. I didn't know
Yeah.
like what I want to do it, but I don't really know why I want to do it. I
Yeah.
just want the experience. And this gave me a really relevant set of information, as well as the backstory of like the basics of the chart. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about that season of life?
Yeah, the season of life reading is like my baby. I love it so much. And I just find that it's for everyone. It's like, because we're all just in a different season of life. But in my studies, I started working really with the lunar phases as we experience them from like day to day throughout the month, every full moon, every new moon. I just was really like moon obsessed. And then I started diving deeper into a more advanced astrological technique called progressions, which kind of fast forwards your own birth chart. It kind of grows up with you. And so through this study, I work specifically with the lunar phase that you were born under and how it progresses as you grow up. So to give you the kind of information and the tools of what lunar phase are you embodying right now, these phases last between like 3 to 4 years. So they're very long periods. And by breaking the energy of this lunar phase down, I find that it gives us so much grace to like really just be where we are. We live in a culture where we're always, I think, expected to be achieving and successful, and we're just always comparing ourselves to other people who are in similar fields or who have what we desire. And through this reading, I really challenge people. Well, I give people information of like, you know what, you're in a dark moon phase. Like, you're, rather than focusing so much on building, you should focus on integrating deeper for the next few years before you start to cultivate and build. So I found for myself that understanding my season of life was like huge aha moment. Like, it allowed me to take a lot of pressure off of myself to like have it all figured out. And as I started offering these readings for clients, it really was helping like understand what are the energetics of what I'm working with. What did I just go through like in the past few years? Where am I now? And how can I kind of support myself as I move forward into the next chapter?
Right. And it's incredible how accurate they are, especially because they are those 2 to 3 year periods. They're long enough to sink in, but you can
Mm-hmm.
remember when the last one started, right? And when we were going through mine, I was like, in this huge transition 2 to 3 years ago. And I was like, oh, this makes total sense of why that would be. But you touched on like the dark phase of the moon and things like that. Can
Mm-hmm.
you tell us a little bit more about the lunar cycles?
Yeah.
I'm sure we've all heard of like a full moon, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even a new moon. Like, I'm more aware now, having learned from you, but can you give us the full enchilada? I know we don't have it like hours and hours. I wish we did. But like the
Yeah.
basics of what we need to know about how the moon operates.
I'll take us through a quick one too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we have, and this is also in my work with kind of as a teacher, as a yoga teacher, I facilitate a lot. My classes are inspired by the astrological happening, specifically by what moon phase we're in, because it really affects us as people, being as watery as we are here on Earth. The energetics of the moon, the gravitational pull, it actually really does have an effect on us. So we have 8 phases to work within. We starting with the new moon. This is when astrologically the sun and moon are together in the sky. Um, so we don't see the moon, right? It's a dark sky. This is when we have actually heightened intuition because our clarity, our vision is less prominent because the sky is dark. So we have to rely a lot more on our own intuition. We do a lot of inner work. We turn inwards. This is a dark, considered a dark phase. This is when we're kind of like planting seeds, starting to dream of what is coming next for this full lunar cycle, whether it be a month or like the full progression cycle. Then we start to move forward into the waxing cycle. We get our waxing crescent moon. This is the first sliver of light we get from the moon. We start to explore ideas that we planted under the new moon, kind of cultivating, allowing ourselves to get creative, try something out. It didn't work, we didn't like it, drop it. Like, really start to think, like, what is this that I want to build? What am I kind of curious about? Then from there, we move into the first quarter moon. This is considered to be like a tense aspect. It's a when the moon and sun astrologically are at 90 degrees apart. And this is when we are like taking that idea, that spark, and we're going to put it into action. We're going to test it out. We're going to commit to that idea. So it's a kind of tense because it requires us to commit to something and not just like, oh, it could work out, it might not. Like, no, we're going to commit to it and we're going to see what happens. So it's asking us to step forward, bring some motivation, some momentum in. And then from there, we're still building towards that full moon. We have our waxing gibbous moon phase. So this is in between the first quarter and the full moon. We are almost to that full moon. So in our bodies, in our day-to-day lives, we're starting to have a lot of heightened activities, social gatherings. We're kind of putting the refinement on whatever we're building. And there's also a sense of like trusting in the decision we made. We can't go back now. It's too late. So we really have to say, okay, I did my best. I'm trusting in the work that I put in. I might reach out for a little bit of help from people around me to kind of like bring it home. And then from there, we move into the full moon phase. So the full moon is like really prominent. People are like, what's happening? It's a full moon. It's crazy. And this is when the sun and moon are in opposition. So the sun is giving full light to the moon. It's under the spotlight. If you think kind of like an analogy, things that were kind of under the cover, under the surface, are now being brought to the light. We're really like shining a flashlight on things that maybe we couldn't see before. It's like Oh, okay. I see what was happening here. The thing that we were building is kind of maybe come to a full circle or a culmination point. We've reached the peak ready to present it. And maybe it worked out the way we planned, maybe it didn't. Maybe it was better, maybe something failed. And we're really kind of just holding space for now what we created and just letting it be. We're celebrating, we're honoring. This is like a super big social time because the energy is so, I don't know. I think a lot of people, if you start to like tap into the lunar phases, you'll start to feel like social gatherings happening around the full moon. Personally, I just cannot sleep very well when it's near a full moon because that lunar energy, I just feel really activated in my body. A lot of people, some astrologers and people who work with the moon, just like the full and new moon, often say like, what are we releasing under the full moon? But as we move through the final phases, I actually think it's hard to release something under a full moon because we are so activated, right? When you're activated and you're like distracted and you're like, oh, this thing over here, we don't have the like grounding quite yet to release, to shed. So we're still holding space for what was built. Now, past the full moon, we move into our waning phases. So we're moving now to the waning gibbous phase. And this is when we're starting to share what we learned. I see a lot of people born with this placement who are teachers, people who are in their life, just in the waning gibbous phase, are really starting to integrate the lesson that they learned from building that thing, from sharing it. So now there's a lot of generosity and being open with what you learned, with your community, with maybe mentor, like students, things like this. And then from there, we come to another square. This is the last quarter square. So this is another tense point when the sun and moon are at a 90-degree angle. And this is the phase that we release under. So, like the first quarter moon, where we were asked to commit to something, we are now asked to commit to release. What are we having to let go? What did not work out from that full moon that is like blocking us from progressing forward? What baggage are we holding that we need to just start to shed and release back into be regenerated into the next cycle? And then the final phase, that I've never gone so fast through all the phases. But the final phase is our waning crescent moon. And this is like really the final release of the lunar phases. It's the phase right before our new moon. And it's that kind of, I think of it as like a really still point between what we've decided to let go of and the act of actually surrendering. This is where we practice gratitude for ourselves and for the process of like, okay, I completed a full cycle. I committed. I showed up. I did it. X, Y, or Z happened, and then I released it. And now I'm ready to take that thing and keep going onto a new cycle, or let it go completely, let it recycle and regenerate into something completely new. And then we just keep going and cycling through.
I love it. It's such a complete picture when you say
Mhm.
everything. Like, I hope people go back and pause and listen and take a look at like the dates on the calendar and start to incorporate this, but it doesn't just need to be the actual like month long, 28-day long, whatever
Mhm.
lunar cycle, right? Like we can use this on that progress moon, like 2-year, 3-year
Yeah.
period, right? We can use this for projects in general. Can you talk to us a little bit about like how can this
Yeah.
be practical in our everyday lives? Like, cool to know. How can we?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. This is something I really like love to work with. I know we did a lunar productivity workshop maybe last year. And the thing is with the moon, because it has this cycle, right? We can follow it to a T as it is on the calendar, but we can also just use these phases as a kind of frame of reference, as a tool to like create our own structure within. I will say, because using the moon on a monthly basis, a day to day, the moon moves so fast, right? When we use it as a monthly scale, it kind of feels like, whoa, things are moving a little too fast. What I really like to do is use it within like a year period or a 6-month period. Astrologically, when we have a new moon in one sign, we're going to have the full moon in that sign 6 months later. So that 6-month period between the new moon and the full moon is a really great time to set up, okay, what am I planting seeds or intentions for under this new moon? Let's see, what is the next new moon we have coming up? New moon in Aquarius. What am I going to set under this new moon? what would I like to achieve by the full moon in Aquarius later? So we have that kind of um, time to dance within. And then from there, I mean, you can also really just use these phases and create your own pocket, like 90 days or 2 years, like we were saying, but assigning each phase a certain period of time, like, okay, I'm building a project and I would like to spend 3 months in the waning crescent phase. I'd like to spend maybe 1 month in the building, the action, putting it to the test. You can get creative with the way that you arrange them, but following the sequence of the natural phases of the moon is going to help you go through a more sustainable, and this is what I really think we should get into and talk about, is like using these phases as like sustainable growth rather than just feeling the need to be constantly outputting, constantly showing up and go, go, go. Like knowing when, okay, I'm actually going to take 3 months in this waning crescent in the very last phase to integrate everything, to really rest, to not focus my energy on building and creating content and putting things out into the world, but actually taking in and resting and learning and taking a course and just like sitting with something before I am ready to then keep producing and going out. So kind of like using your own intuition, I would say, in how you measure each phase for yourself. But yeah, that's how I love to work with, just mindfully going through each phase.
Yeah, having the intention attached to it,
Mhm.
right? Like first you have the knowledge, okay, this is what the moon is doing. This is what the natural cycle looks like. We can apply this in everyday life to a project, to a goal, to a life transition, to whatever, right? It can be applied to anything in our natural everyday life. And the way that we can use it to support it, we can use the cycles and this knowledge to support our goal or whatever we're working on is by honoring the energy of each phase so that you can sustain your energy throughout in a way that feels really natural. I love that.
Yeah. And I want to say too, Jill, that something that feels important is when I started studying this and then I got really so obsessed with it, is that the way we operate in our society, as in the way we work, is inherently energetically more masculine, right? We work on a solar time scale, which is like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We move with the sun. We go to sleep when the sun goes down, and we're just going. When the sun is up, we're working, we're producing, we're like getting things done. Women or people who menstruate operate a lot more on this longer cycle phase with the moon, the 28-day cycle. So knowing that you're not going to be productive at every day of the week and maybe using that as well. I mean, I think people who menstruate have this kind of internal clock cycle going, but really honoring that the phases that we're working with, like we could really be super focused for 1 week of the month, and then 1 week we really need to focus on integrating and like resting and like preparing our bodies and our minds to like get back into that go mode. But it's not a constant go that it we kind of operate in this world as. So I want to bring that too, is that we do live in a world that is inherently masculine with the way that we produce energy and work, quote unquote. But when we tap into this more cyclical lunar feminine cycle, it allows us to drop into a rhythm that is more sustainable.
Hmm. That's such a good point. And we, I think, have been running on this masculine cycle for so long that we tend to forget that we're in it.
Yeah.
We have to be
Yeah.
super intentional about slowing down and paying attention to our bodies, to the moon, to how we're feeling, because especially moms, like this podcast has so many moms that listen, and it's burnout. We get
Hmm.
burnout, and it's because we're expected to do, or we expect of ourselves, whatever the situation, to do and produce and go and be on. And we're
Hmm.
not taking that time that this natural cycle shows us is required to rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like what it means as a mother to rest and to demonstrate rest and to be like, this is the part of my cycle of the moon where we need to quiet. And how you kind of teach that as well is so, and right, we're like moving, how we can move away from that go, go, go masculine energy to something that is sustainable, has longevity, is caring for our bodies and demonstrating how we take care of ourselves.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, the thought just popped up. Do you have any ideas that come top of mind to like how we could start to introduce this to our young ones? Like this
Mm.
idea of you don't need to push all the time. And here's a framework to use. Like they can see the moon in the sky. The kids see it. That's something that they know about from an early age. That they might not have words for too many other things, right?
Mhm.
But is there a way that we can start to do things with them and show them we do this at this time because look up at the sky. This is a
Mhm.
time that we're more active or less active. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I have one of my like freebie offerings is a moon mapping guide. And I think as you read it, and it has meditations that go with it as well, and that might be fun to do for yourself, but also then to like bring in with the kids too. But just like how you once you start to be have your own practice with the moon and like you can see it, you can feel it, then you can show it to them, right? Like the moon is so bright, we're feeling really active, we can see a lot, we have more understanding of what's around us, so we have a lot more external feedback and things like this, like how as you process how to work with the moon, then just instilling this with them, the moon is quiet, the moon, there is no moon, so we're going to rest, we rest as the moon rests, like kind of something like this, I think. Yeah, well, now you're inspiring me, Jill. I'm
Right?
going to be out here writing a children's book about the moon.
Yes, please do. Please do. That'd be so cool. I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge. You have so much. And you dig in such a profound way. Like, what else can you share with us that's on your heart that's like super just feels pertinent, you know?
Yeah.
What else do you have?
What else do I have? Well, I think I want to talk about like people's introduction to astrology because I think that this is the one of the other reasons why I created this offering, is because through my practice with yoga, with astrology, is I am just really, really passionate about making astrology accessible to people who maybe don't have time to like sit and study, but also like what does it mean for me here on earth, like what is that, like what does having Venus and Gemini actually mean for me? And I think that the moon is a really accessible, beautiful way for people to start having an astrological practice. And a practice is what it is. It's like it's an art form, it's a science, it's a kind of set of data that we use to understand patterns and timing and cycles. And when we start to kind of follow our curiosity or learn more about our chart, what astrology means to us and how we can engage with it, it allows us to drop into, like I said earlier, grace for ourselves and like understanding that we are inherently all so different. And it gives us a language to put our feelings to our experience to, that gives us like, oh, this was happening during this time. And that's when I was going through this. It makes me feel like a little less crazy. And we can start to just soften into the experiences that we're having. And there was something else I was going to say, but I started floating into astrology world.
It'll come back
But
to you.
I it I think I want people to not be afraid of astrology. I think a lot of people have fear about astrology of it's saying, this is what your life is going to be, this you're destined for this. But really what I want people to understand is that it can be a tool for you here in your human experience on earth, like, oh, the moon is at last quarter moon in Scorpio today. Maybe it's a good time for me to like check in with where I'm feeling blocked or where I'm feeling stagnant in my body. Like really, really, this is my like mission is to help people use these tools to just check in and reflect and like where are you? How can you push yourself to like grow past this like limiting belief? And how can you, be a little bit more playful using these tools to like help remind us of different energies and different archetypes?
Hmm. That's fantastic. And it does, like you said, take practice.
Yeah.
I've been introduced to this idea through you. I don't know, for I guess maybe let's call it 6 months or so now. Might not be quite that long, but I am slowly paying attention. I usually know what the moon's doing now, taking the time to understand, like, okay, it is this phase, this is what I can expect to feel, or maybe others are feeling this way too, and having more grace with them. Like, if
Mm,
it was super fiery for me this last full moon, and I was like,
mhm,
okay, this is like stuff is happening. Give us all grace. We're moving
mm,
through, and just sort of understanding that it and remembering that it's a flow.
mhm.
Such a
And my favorite thing to remember about astrology is nothing is forever. Like inherently, these are all cycles. Like you said, we're in flow. Like we're moving through maybe a really fiery, tense moon, and we're just going to move through it, but we're aware of it and we have awareness of it. And so, and the same thing I offer to my clients in the season of life reading is what phase are you in? What would you like to be doing in your life right now? Like, what would you like to be achieving? And how can you then support yourself to achieve what you want to achieve, knowing what phase you're in?
Yeah. And I can say just from experience, it's such a powerful tool to have in your toolkit. And as you said, just to reiterate, and I want to make sure people hear this, that you said earlier, it's like it gives you permission not to feel like you have to have it exactly perfect or all together at any point in time, right? To understand where
Mhm.
you are and what energies are there to support you can really help, I think, with this idea of perfectionism and comparison and
Yeah.
guilt and all of those things that are so prevalent, especially for women.
And just thinking too, I use this example a lot is like maybe you were in college with someone like a friend and you had similar, you know, tracks and you were doing everything the same and they just seemed to be getting so many more opportunities and you were trying so hard and it just felt like it was an uphill battle. And if you look back onto your charts, you know, your friend may have been in like a full moon progressed phase where naturally they were energetically just magnetizing things to them at that time. Whereas you were maybe progressing through a down phase and you were needing to integrate and like spend a lot more time internally processing. And now maybe you're moving towards this full moon phase, like 15 years down the line, you're starting to attract all of those opportunities. It's like being able to know, okay, just because we're the same age doesn't mean we're in the same cycle. And it's just so hard for us to even imagine ourselves that different from other people. But it really is such a beautiful thing to see, to be like, wow. Like I remember when I was studying this and I looked back on my chart when I first moved to New York, my first few months here were so hard. And I was moving here to be a dancer and I was just auditioning and nothing was working. And it was like I had never been so tired in my life. And I looked back at that time and I was in the waning crescent, like the very final phase before a new moon. And I just had no lunar energy. I was really needed to be processing and going into a deep kind of solitude restful place. And I was just trying so hard to be out in the world. And it really did feel like I was pushing a boulder uphill. And then when I look back, I was like, no wonder. And now I'm in a different place and the momentum is starting to build. And it's just a really beautiful thing to be able to witness your own cycle.
Hmm. Oh, what a gift. I hope that everyone listening goes and gets a season of life reading because truly it would be so impactful for you and thereby to help your family, for you to have the
Mm,
words to be able to express what's going on and have those discussions and to plan and to reflect and to teach the community that you're in, whether you're like the head of a household or part of a community or maybe you're not in a leadership position, but to be able to have those conversations with peers and spread the understanding.
yeah.
um, where's the best place for people to connect with you, Anna? Like, I love your Instagram and I'm on
Mm.
your mailing list, which is fantastic. And I'm lucky enough to have some monthly cosmic business reports from you too. But where do people go to start to do this work?
Yeah, Jill, you're just getting all my
I
magic.
know.
Um,
Yeah.
well, my website is a great place to find everything. That's where you can book a reading with me. I have a few different offerings on there as well, but the season of life, like that we've been talking about, is a really great place to start. My Instagram, I share a lot of kind of insight, inspirations on my Instagram, and definitely my weekly newsletter. I kind of go through the astrology of the week, how we can work with it, how we can actually practice it in a tangible way in our life and not just be like, oh, cool, Venus is in Capricorn. I don't know what that means, but like, how do we practice that actually as a human? And my weekly Cosmic Flow yoga class is a new offering. Every Sunday we gather to do the astrology forecast kind of on Zoom in person, and then I create a really short, gentle, easy flow for everyone to participate. To move the astrology of the week ahead into our bodies, I give us journal prompts and a meditation. It's every Sunday. I'm just launching it as a drop in, also a membership as well. So that is a really nice way if you're curious about this, but maybe not ready for like the full reading, you can start to get a taste of how I operate and the way that my practice works through these weekly classes.
I love that. That is such a
Yeah.
generous, valuable offering. Everything you do is incredible. And I'm so grateful that you came on the show today and shared your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. It was a pleasure. As always, I just love to talk about the moon, and talking about it with you is even better.
Thank you.